Welcome to MTMG's IT Roundtable, where we bring the power of human connections to the tech world. Our experts become part of your team, so whatever tech problem is keeping you up at night, we can help you solve it.
We're thrilled to welcome John Frieslaar to MTMG as our newest strategic infrastructure consultant. A former CTO for Western Europe at ZTE and a leader in securing over £1 billion in telecom infrastructure deals, John brings unmatched expertise in next-gen networks and sustainable infrastructure, and will focus on helping our clients future-proof their digital foundations. Welcome, John.
Pleasure to be on board.
So we'll jump right into the questions. Can you give us an overview of your experience in the world of telecom?
My experience in the world of telco started about 40 years ago when I sold an apprenticeship with Telecom South Africa, where I spent 15 years maintaining and managing networks. And then in the early 90s, I moved to the United Kingdom, where I joined companies like Lucent, Huawei, and ZTE most recently. Most of the time has been working on evolving PSTN networks, with the biggest project probably being the BT21CN network transformation project, implementing cybersecurity initiatives to make sure we just provide more secure, sustainable solutions to our customers. And of course, looking at things like sustainability across networks to try and see how can we make our networks of tomorrow more sustainable and aligned with the global carbon initiatives.
Excellent. First of all, welcome aboard, John. It's a real pleasure to have you here. Over that time, can you share any of the customer success stories that you've had?
Yeah, probably the biggest success story that I've had, like I mentioned earlier on, was the rollout of the BT21CN solution. Whilst that was a rollout of a new network in the UK, replacing the PSTN network with voice over IP, ADSL, and broadband solutions, it was a solution that we took global. And I ended up selling this solution on a global basis for Huawei, consulting with many customers from Asia through to South America. And I think it really started the sort of a mass adoption of broadband and accelerating what I would suggest being the digital economy. So that's probably my biggest success story to date. I would then also rate maybe the work we did in Huawei again with the cybersecurity and trying to make a network safer and more secure. Not so much on the rollout of the network, but on changing the way a vendor supplies equipment to market and changing their whole philosophy of how they develop and manufacture product.
Well, so those are obviously the successes. Do you have any stories about what went wrong along the way?
So there are many things that have gone wrong along the way, and no matter how much you plan, something will always catch you unawares. I think probably some of the things that went wrong for me was my time with Lucent, working with a customer on a major new IP router program, and funding ran out at the 2-year mark, right at the point when the customer was ready to order. So that was a bit of a gotcha moment. Probably geopolitics has been another major factor for me in seeing the geopolitics between different nations around the world. Once a customer has been heavily investing in a particular technology solution, and geopolitics getting in the way, rendering those investments obsolete. In complex multi-product solutions, product roadmaps not being aligned correctly, creating frustration with the customer, not being able to release services at the right time because one part of the solution doesn't quite have the features that are required for the entire solution to work. And just generally trying to deliver a solution to the customer that aligns with their expectations.
So if I could just ask a follow-up on there, you made you alluded to geopolitics. Do you have an example of when something along those lines went wrong for you?
Yeah, so two examples. One being in Huawei. We were halfway through rolling out a £1 billion contract in the UK when we were asked to stop rolling. And we had to engage with the security services to find out what the issues were and how we could provide then with the assurity that the network would be safe, that led us to developing a cybersecurity lab, which at the time was the first in the world. We used that cybersecurity lab to teach and train other Five Eyes nations around the world about how to implement security. And then we took that across into Huawei as a company to change the way they manufacture and produce products. And that was just a stall. The bigger challenge probably was during my time at ZTE, when we had developed and created a complete fiber solution for the UK, with fiber to the home being deployed across the UK, including metro edge compute access platforms and the virtualization of service providers on top of this platform. And we were a few days away from contract closure with a particular customer when we were sanctioned and put that business, unfortunately, at risk.
Well, at least in one of those situations, something good came out of it, right? I mean, the whole cybersecurity lab. I mean, that sounds like it, and you cited it as one of your successes. So that's a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, the solution that we developed for the full fiber solution, it was not wasted. There were many providers that actually took it on board, and it became a leading product for ZTE and won many awards.
Interesting. So obviously, over the last 40 years, the world of telco has been nothing but constant change, right, and evolving. What do you see today as the market trends that are occurring?
And today, I think the biggest trends is got to be AI-driven networks. As we move from traditional deployment of networks to the automation of those networks, things like AI preventative maintenance creeping into those networks, reshaping the way those networks operate. Along with that, we're seeing things like Open RAN and disaggregation of the wireless infrastructure networks, again, driven by geopolitics to a certain degree, wanting to create more vendors capable of supplying RAN equipment, because one of the biggest geopolitical concerns is that there is too few service vendors providing RAN equipment to the market. Another one, I think, is sustainability and making networks more energy efficient, becoming a big driver. We're starting to see lots of customers actually putting it into their request for proposals and invitation to tenders, looking for ways that they can improve sustainability of their networks from vendors. Cybersecurity and resilience is always going to be a big driver. It's been there now for a couple of years, and it's only going to get more important. I think satellite networks and high altitude platforms is going to be another trend that's going to be a big driver, especially when it looks towards 6G or the deployment of 6G networks. And then, of course, private networks, with the growth of 5G private networks in manufacturing environments, typically.
It's fascinating stuff. And there's so many different areas where it's impacting enterprises and mid-market enterprise and even small business. But one of the things that I do struggle with is sustainability, and how do we incentivize that? Because one of the things that there are several people I know that are very involved in this and very interested in advocating for it, but how do we create the incentive structure financially for organizations to do that, to want to embrace that? Or do you have any ideas along those lines?
It's a difficult question because we still have very traditional financial models, and those traditional financial models are what's going to drive the way people spend money. So what you really need to do is see a change in how the financial markets value sustainability. We're starting to see the emergence of banks now that will loan money to people that are providing more sustainable solutions to market, which is one of the ways of doing it. We're also starting to see creeping into the financial accounting methods ways of assessing the value of sustainability. I think we're still at early times or early date at this point in time. But I think as time goes by and maybe more carbon charging comes into effect, maybe more value gets recognized from circular economics and taking back those resources and reusing those resources as manufacturing gets improved by finding ways of reutilizing the resources that come back into the organizations that are selling them, or organizations that are set up to use that resource that has been recovered. I think these are things that are going to change the way sustainability evolves. It's still early days, but yeah, that's the way I think we're going to see things happen.
I think that's really important, and I thoroughly agree with you. I think the financial models are the thing that has to change, because those incentive structures are not aligned correct just today to go on this path, but it is what is going to have to drive it. But how?
One
go
of
ahead.
one of the things that we were espousing a couple of years ago was vendors not actually selling equipment, but renting it or buying back that equipment at the end of a particular lifespan,
Right.
which would incentivize them to develop solutions that are more reusable, especially as we move now towards more cloud-based platforms where you can reuse that compute power for a new application. It may be pushed closer to the edge of the network or to less critical components of the network, but it is still reusing that computing power without getting rid of it and putting it in a landfill somewhere.
Well, I think as an example is 10, 15 years ago, people thought there was absolutely no way you could reuse anything to put satellites into space. You just couldn't. If you were sending up a rocket to do it, it was going to be lost. You used it that one time and that was it. Starlink has found a way to do that and make it reusable. So what once was thought not possible, people just didn't accept no and found a way to do it. So I think you're right on the money. But how are all the trends that we're talking about likely to change over the next 5 years?
Well, I think AI and ML or machine language is definitely going to help networks develop in ways that we haven't yet imagined, number one. Number two, it's the orchestration of those services, which is going to make it a lot smoother and a lot easier to put in place services that we haven't yet thought of. It's probably also going to allow us to understand where waste is in a network, because at the moment, a lot of networks are typically overbuilt, underbuilt in some places like rural settings where they could be of more value, but often overbuilt in areas where there's a huge buildup in city centers and so forth. I think things like Open RAN hopefully will mature and become more sustainable. Today, Open RAN is probably not as sustainable as a hardware-based platform, but I think over time we'll get. I think energy will become a differentiator. As we start looking at energy in a serious manner, we'll probably see more service providers starting to partner with each other and align. Whilst open competition is a good thing, it also means that people are building infrastructure-rich networks which are consuming lots of energy, which is the waste of overbuilding, which I've referred to earlier on. As they partner and align more with each other and share services, I think you'll start to recover some of that waste, or at least reduce some of that waste. I think the emergence of non-terrestrial networks or satellite networks serving the underserved regions of the world will lead to a lot more energy saving in those areas. So not necessarily the telco networks themselves saving, but it's the pass-on effects of those networks allowing other people to save. Things like quantum computing and next generation compute platforms, we don't know what's possible from those yet. So I think those are the sort of areas where I see value coming in the future.
Agreed. So over your experience in telco, you've dealt with a lot of customers. And I think we all have experienced it where we work with a customer, we make recommendations, and for whatever reason, could be various reasons, they just simply don't want to take those recommendations and do things on their own. And we say, hey, you really shouldn't do that, but they do it anyway. So what are one or two things that you've experienced where clients have hurt their own efforts by doing this?
I think there's a lot of things that customers have done that is due to competitive pressures of the market. Rushing to market early, There are customers that have deployed SMDS services as a precursor to ATM. And then ATM has come along and they've found themselves with an SMDS network that's probably not as efficient as had they waited a year or two for an ATM network. But I think the bigger issue is probably overlooking cultural change. Many organizations, they totally underestimate the effort that's required sometimes to ensure that two cultures are able to see the same solution. And it's often not a technology upgrade or mind shift. It's literally a mind shift from people seeing things from a slightly different perspective. And I think neglecting change management is another issue. People tend to request things in meetings and don't put it through a proper change management process, which leads to roadmaps not aligning and so forth. Chasing technology without a business case, people tend to go out and deploy the best technology they can and then find out that it doesn't really work. 5G being a case in point. Across Europe at the moment, regulation has required operators to deploy 5G en masse, and not only en masse, but in different regions with different regulatory requirements, which has led to them not being able to deploy as much as they wanted to or implement as many services as they want to because they're chasing too many different regions with too many different regulations, which is costing them a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the other thing is underestimating security implications, rolling out new technologies without actually doing robust security or cybersecurity planning right up front. Those are the main things that I've seen.
So, John, we were talking the other day about some of the different areas that MTMG has experts, and one is on understanding the data that an organization has to understand their client today. What is it that they really want? What is it that they need to see? Where are they going? And as an organization, helping to define that strategy on where you should go as an organization. From your background, if you find that kind of information, how would you approach a mid-market enterprise leadership, whether it's on the product or business side, to help them leverage that information on how they move forward?
So I think data can be insightful. There are a lot of people who talk about data needing to be clean data, needing to be structured data and all that sort of stuff. I think all data is helpful because sometimes you can't really see the data unless you start to understand where things are going wrong in the collection of the data. So, data that's not complete may become better when you start to think about scenarios around the data. You can't take just the data on its own and say, well, that must be the reason this is happening because that's what this particular set of data is showing me. I believe in systems thinking. So thinking across that data and other bits of data and potentially going out and doing some additional research to understand, is there something else that may be affecting that data? Is there something small, a shift that we can put in place, a lever that we can pull that can improve things? So from a data perspective, are we missing what wants to do strategically? How does what they're asking fit with their end goals? Because unless you understand what their end goals are, you're not going to understand exactly what they're trying to achieve. And they may be missing something that is obvious to you. With a different perspective allows you to go to them and say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Many of the things that I've done in my past history has been looking at things differently to way the customers asked it. Specifically when it comes to filling out ITTs and RFPs and that sort of stuff, customer will often ask a question and it gives you the ability to go back and say, here is the answer, but have you thought of this? And many of the things that we've done and what's resulted in the change in the world has been as a result of the, have you thought about this? Not, here is a response to your question.
Fascinating stuff.
Yep.
So thank you so much. This has been so much to think through. as always, every time I talk to you, we come away with this same sort of feeling in a good way. But now it's that time for the more than mere genius questions. These are the questions to learn more about John, the person. So we'll get right into those. Outside of work, what's an activity that you're passionate about?
Probably photography and walking. I love to walk somewhere where I can see a sunset, somewhere where I can see animals, somewhere where I can capture the presence of the surroundings that I'm in. I tend to like going to see old houses, country estates, understanding the reason for why they're there. Recently went to a country estate that allowed me to get a better picture about the gunpowder plot. So yeah, it's insightful going to take photographs and walking in the country.
Very cool. Name one book or podcast that has inspired you.
I've answered this question before. It has to be Systems Thinking by Daniela Meadows. I think she changed my world when I got into systems thinking. It's a very powerful way of shifting away from a reductionist approach in life, thinking about things very differently, and trying to see how things impact upon each other. It's a book I keep returning to. It always gives me different insights and perspectives. It keeps me grounded.
Absolutely fascinating stuff. Tell me about a mentor.
So I've had a few mentors in my life, but probably the most important mentor that I had was an uncle of mine, Henry Fade. Not a biological part of my family. It was a close friend of my dad's when he started working. And when I was born, he was around, he pushed me in my prime as a child. But later on in my teenage years in life, my parents had to move away because my dad got a promotion and I was left completing my final year at school. And he stepped in and gave me insight into the things that my dad probably wasn't able to give me during those latter teenage years, teaching me the importance of how to work on a car, how to make a barbecue, how to build hot houses. There are things that you don't get to do as a very young child. But yeah, his influence shaped my career and probably gave me many values. And you realize that nowadays I've got to show up for others as he showed up for me.
So true. So you're a talented man, but which talent do you not have that you would most like to have?
Many. But probably the most important one for me would be the ability to play a musical instrument. I've always wanted to either learn a banjo or the acoustic guitar. I think that it's that creativity element that I'm missing in the musical area. Let's put it that way. Something that technology can't.
Yeah, it's one of our more popular answers.
It is. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
That was a very difficult question. And the reason why I say that is because I've been fortunate enough to travel to a few places and see many diverse cultures. And to me, it's not so much where to live that's important. It's what you can learn from those cultures, how those cultures have seen life and what's flowed from those cultures. So if I use an example, Memphis in Tennessee was a melting pot of cultures in the US. And there's so much that has come out of that melting pot of cultures, food-wise, the cooking industry. There's just so many things that have come out of it. So for me, it's more a case of exploring the world and understanding what each place has to offer. But if I'm pushed, then probably Rotunda in Florida or the Murska coast in Croatia would be places where I felt most at home.
Interesting. Elvis Presley came out of Memphis. There you go.
He did.
That's right.
So I said many things came out of it.
So what profession other than yours would you love to try?
Okay. So early on in life, there were two careers that I was looking to move into. One would have been either a chef or the other would have been a game ranger, both very high on my list. Unfortunately, due to the situation at the time and the cost of education, they weren't possible. Mainly the chef side of things. The game ranger side, I met my wife a very young stage of my life. And when I realized the salary that would be paid as a game ranger, I realized I wouldn't be able to afford to marry my wife. Moved into telecoms, which paid a living wage.
Fascinating stuff. Who is your favorite superhero?
So this one I have a real problem with, because superheroes I have no real inspiration from. To me, the superheroes in life are those people that give it their all in their field. So for me, I enjoy rugby as a sport. So there are a number of rugby players that to me are absolute phenomenal heroes. They put everything into the game, go the extra mile, put their bodies on the line, and do that all for the fans. That being a sport example, there are many other people that go out and feed the homeless and help those in need. So if I were to pick a superhero, it would come from one of those ranks. But now there are far too many of them to name.
What is your favorite sound?
It's not until I started to think about this that I realized the importance of sound. Is it a favorite sound, or is it a situation that you're in? And why I say that is because for me, the sound of water lapping on a boat hull in the middle of a lake is absolutely brilliant. But it's not as good without the distant cry of a fish eagle. So is it the situation you're in, or is it the sound you're in?
It could be both.
Whatever you want.
Exactly.
I've been recently watching the IPL cricket on TV, and sometimes I can't watch it and I'm going to sit and do some work. And in the background, you hear that track of the willow hitting the ball, and you know in your mind that they've just scored a 6 because it's that sound. That
Joe is right there with you. He's a huge cricket fan.
Oh boy.
What's your favorite song when you're stressed or you need a lift?
I would probably say I have a favorite genre being country music. I've got a wide appreciation for music, and I often see music in the world around me. And I have this strange thing where I'm in a situation, a song will come to mind. Often boarding this ferry in Hong Kong to go across to mainland China, I would think of Whitesnake song "Here I Go Again." So again, it's situational dependent, but yeah, I enjoy all sorts of music.
Excellent. And our final question, what is the one thing you want to be most known for after you are gone?
I'm a very humble person. I don't actually like to be known for anything that I do at the moment. But if it was one thing, it would probably be, have I helped anybody, and have I brought better experiences to their lives? Have I led them to seeing the world in a new perspective, and then grow up and be a better person? And would they look back in years to come and say, well, that enriched my life in some way, shape, or form?
I think that's very powerful. And I think it summarizes one of the reasons we like working with you so much, just because you are such an incredibly quality person. Not only do you have a world-class mind, but you are just such a genuine human. And we love that about you. So thank you so much for joining us today. I think this was a really fascinating conversation. And I think it shows people a bit about how good of a man you are and how much they can learn from you. I know I do every time we talk. Literally, every time we talk, I learn something new. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
So that brings us to the end of today's conversation. Thank you for joining us. If today's discussion resonated with you, please consider giving us a 5-star review. Your feedback not only supports our show, but also helps others find us. Thank you so much for listening to MTMG's IT Roundtable. We look forward to bringing you more conversations soon. Until then, take care, and know our team is always here to help. Sláinte
MTMG, guidance that empowers.